everyone. I hope all of you are doing well and doing great. So let's get started, guys. I hope you know that this is the topic for today's webinar, which is Azure SQL Database tutorial. So that's something you are going to learn today. We are going to deep dive in today. So before we start with the webinar, let me introduce myself. My name is Deepak. I have 15 plus years of experience in this field, and I have done various implementation deployments for various cloud vendors. Along with that, I have certain patents on my name. Even there are certain cloud solutions which are developed by me. So let's get started. So this is the agenda for today. We want to talk about why Azure SQL, what is the Azure SQL, the different models, different tiers for it. And before we start with anything, we are going to start with a very basic thing so that your basics are clear. Before even I talk about Azure SQL, we are going to understand what Azure is. Even before we are going to talk about Azure, we are going to understand what exactly cloud computing is. Even before you understand cloud computing is, we are going to talk about cloud. So we're going to take a baby steps. We will, talk about each and every component. So if you're a newbie, you never heard about this, definitely you're going to get a fair understanding about this entire thing today. So let's get started. Let's talk about, why Azure SQL. Before that, let's basically understand, about cloud computing. So what exactly is the cloud? Why we are talking about this Azure? What is the need of this? What exactly this Azure is? So basically, what happened is I give you a little bit background history of it. When this was again one of the use case which gave basically the birth to the cloud, wherein let's say you want to share the files to two people, like there are sender and the receiver. They want to communicate to each other. They can, use internet. They can send the emails and do everything. But let's say they want to share a certain file. They want to, let's say, share, let's say, maybe a 1 gig of data or maybe heavy bulk of data that they want to share. How they can share to them. So for that, what you can use is you can use a LAN cable. You can have a LAN connectivity with two computers where you can share the file. There are different modes that you can use. You can use hard drive, pen drive, floppy disk. So you are going to have a dependency of the hardware. It's easy if you are, let's say, living nearby, but what if you are living, very far? Maybe you are living in two different cities or two different countries, and you are in that case you have to, ship that hard drive, pen drive, or any other equipment that you have through the courier service. So it's going to take a time. Let's say someone needs the data urgent, and if someone has to basically wait for that long, it's going to become a big nightmare, right? So I mean, people cannot wait that long for that. So that gave the birth to the cloud, wherein you can store your data, and you can give permission to the other people to get access of that data. So other people will be having the access of the entire data. So it's like that the other people who are going to access it, they are going to have the data available everywhere. So that's the beauty of the cloud. You don't have a dependency of any specific hardware. You just upload the data, and it gets accessible everywhere. Clear? So basically, in the case of cloud, what exactly happened is that you can share the data. You can share the files, you can share the thing to someone else without having the connectivity with the wires, without having a physical connectivity, without using any physical media. So now, basically, what we do is we realize that okay, that's a good thing. What extra we can do with the cloud? Now we realize that like how we basically people can take benefit of the cloud. In the next evolution, we realize that we can even spin up everything. Like for example, if I want to spin up the virtual machines, I want to create so many resources. Like for example, I want to create different instances I can create on the cloud. It's not later on we enhance that much like where we are right now. On the cloud itself, you can create so many virtual machines. Let's say I have to work on a project. I got a requirement where I have to work on a Linux project. I'm using a Windows machine, and I'm using a very old Windows machine, which is, let's say I'm using Windows 7 with 2 GB of RAM and maybe of 250 GB of hard drive. I have a requirement where I have to work on 3 operating systems in parallel: Windows Server 2016, Windows Server 2019, and maybe Ubuntu or Kali in this machine. So in that case, maybe I can create a virtual machine on my system. That's going to be a first thought which is going to come in your mind, right? But it's not possible for me because I'm already have using a degraded a lower version of the hardware. What I can do in this case is like I can spin up the resources on the cloud, wherein what you can do is you can create the virtual machines on the cloud. It's going to have a pay-as-you-go service, wherein whatever you are going to consume, you have to pay accordingly for that. It's not like that the charges which are going to be you are going to be charged for like for something that you have not used. It's like a unit of electricity. Whatever the units that you have consumed, you pay for the bills for that electricity, right? Similar case in the case of Azure. Whatever you're going to consume, you have to pay for it. So that's basically the beauty. So Azure basically is a cloud service which is provided by Microsoft. Now, what's the difference in this? So like there are different cloud services which are provided in the market. Like for example, your Google is providing the cloud services which is known as GCP, which is Google Cloud Platform. Amazon is providing you the cloud services which is known as AWS, which is Amazon Web Services. Again, IBM have their own cloud services. Even Adobe have their own cloud services. Microsoft have their own cloud services. And what's so special in this? Why we are talking about this Azure today? So Azure has a lot of advantages. One of the reason is, you know, that again, first the very big advantage is this is the cloud service from the Microsoft. And you know that Microsoft has variety of tools, variety of softwares, variety of products. Even one of the unique thing is Active Directory, you know. So you can integrate all the different technologies, different tools, different stuff which is provided by Microsoft with their cloud service. So if I'm using Microsoft Azure, if I'm a developer, let's say I'm working on Visual Studio or Visual Studio Code, I can have a direct integration with the Azure. Let's say I'm basically a DB, a database person. So in that case, I can have a direct integration of my database with the Azure. Even I can make my database more protective. Even I can migrate my data from my on-premises to the cloud platform. Let's say I'm a networking guy. You know, I can even migrate my network as well. So there are so many kind of things which basically it support. And at the back end for security purpose, which basically created a big boom in the industry in the case of Azure, it has one of the security feature which is known as a key vault. At the back end, it uses FIPS 142 level 2 devices, wherein what will happen is, let's say, you know, someone will try to steal that hardware. Someone will try to, you know, take out that hardware from a data center. It's going to delete everything from that, you know, device. So it's like you know, like a FBA thing, like a super thing, wherein you know that your computer is a hard drive. Now, you lost your computer, even though you have a password or something. If someone can open your computer, take the hard drive out, they will be able to read the contents, right? So in the case of the key vault that basically Azure is using at the backend, they have FIPS 142 level 2 devices with the zeroization feature. So if someone is still able to come to the Azure data center, steal that hardware, if they will try to open that hardware to take out the hard drive from it, it's going to delete everything. So that kind of security is also provided by the Azure. Clear? So I hope that you guys got a fair understanding what exactly is Azure, and you know what are the different features it has and how basically it got evolved. So I hope that the basic is clear to you guys what exactly is Azure. So Azure is a cloud computing service which is provided by Microsoft, wherein you can have integration with different tools, technologies, products, and also it supports variety of integration with variety of different Microsoft products. Okay, so let's talk about, you know, why Azure SQL. Before we're going to dive in more detail, you know, about integration, about different thing, let's understand why, you know, Azure SQL. Like, what exactly is the benefit? Like, why I have to go with, you know, Azure SQL? Because you know that there are. If you talk about SQL, what SQL stands for? SQL basically means structured query language. So you can have this SQL setup on various platforms, on various systems. So why Azure SQL? What's the benefit of it? There are various benefits. So Azure SQL is basically a service which is basically hosted on the, again, there are three types through which you can basically host the Azure SQL service. We're going to talk about, basically you can have Azure SQL Database, you can have Azure SQL Managed Instance, you can have a dedicated virtual machine on Azure, and you can install SQL Server on that. So why Azure SQL? Like, what's the benefit of using the SQL on the cloud? So first of all, it's a cost-saving platform. You don't have to maintain the data centers. You don't have to pay for the electricity, the cooling condition, and you know, you don't have to have that kind of headache where you have to upgrade the operating system. You know that whatever the operating system you're using right now, it's going to be end of life someday. Then you have to upgrade. Let's say you're using a client-side operating system. You're using Windows 7. You have to upgrade to Windows 8 because Windows 7 was end of life, and then Windows 10 and Windows 7 is now end of life. If you're using server-side operating system, then in that case, you know, your older version of operating system or end of life, like Windows Server 2008. Now, Windows Server 2012 is there, but maybe it's going to be, you know, end of life somewhere soon. So you don't have to get in that kind of hassle. You don't have to worry about the patching, the upgrades, licenses, everything. So it's a cost-effective and cost-saving solution. The next one that basically you have is scalability and performance. So in the case of Azure, one of the biggest you know, advantages is it basically have a feature of auto scale up and auto scale down. let's define the condition. Like I can say that if my CPU utilization is going to go beyond 70%, it should increase. When it's coming to make the, I can just have a condition defined without having any kind of complex knowledge of programming or without knowing the scripting much. I can just define the conditions easily and I can use it. That's the other advantage. Then another advantage is high security. Like I said, you can have an integration with the FIPS. So basically, in the case of database, you know that it's one of the critical component because it holds the sensitive data. If your database is compromised, it can become the big issue. So the reason is that in this case, what you can do is like it's basically very easy and easy, simple to set up. It provides you more security because at the back end you can have an integration with your keyboard. So in the case of SQL, what you can do is you can use the concept of encryption. Encryption basically means that converting the data from one form to another. So where the sender is going to convert from your readable data into unreadable data. Readable data is known as the plain text. Unreadable data is known as a ciphertext. So in this case, like let's say what you do is you are going to encrypt your entire database with one key, which is known as DEK, which is data encryption key. You store that DEK on your on-premise platform or the cloud platform. It's your wish, but you have to encrypt that DEK with another key, which is MEK, master encryption key. That has to be stored into the protected apparatus, which is it can be the keyboard, which basically it supports it. So having the chance of it being compromised is very less. Even it provides 99.99% resiliency. Next one is time is on your side, which basically means that you have all the things in favor. Even if someone is, let's say in the worst case, someone is able to steal that the hardware from the Azure, it's not going to compromise your data because it's going to zeroize the data. And the last one is basically you're going to have the business continuity and the disaster recovery. Your data is going to be available up all the time. Like I said, it provides a 99.99% resiliency. You can have a geo replication. There are different replication strategies that it supports, wherein you can replicate your data from two different sites. So that in the worst case, if your data is basically failed, it can be recovered from the different sites. Clear? And out. So these are like the different advantages. That's why we have Azure SQL. Now let's understand what exactly is Azure SQL Service. So let's dive in more detail about it. So in the case of Azure SQL, it basically have three types. One is Azure SQL Database, second is Azure SQL Managed Service, third is SQL Server, which is going to be a dedicated on the Azure VM. So Azure SQL basically is a family of managed, secure, and intelligent products that use a SQL Server database engine in the Azure cloud. And we are going to dive in a little bit more detail when we're going to talk about the next topic, which is the architecture. So this is the architecture basically, wherein this is like a very higher level. So there is in the case layer. Second is basically is the service layer. Third is the platform layer, and the last one is the infra layer. So here you see right now this is the infrastructure layer at the bottom that you have, and this is the platform layer where you have your SQL Server, the different facilities that it provides in the basically the platform layer. Then you have the service layer where you can provision, deprovision. You can just set the matrices, you can set the limit, you can see the routing, how much things are being consumed, and the last one basically is the client layer, which is the front end layer for the users. Next one is models and service tiers. So basically in this case it has three models: the managed instance, the single database, and the elastic pool. So let's talk about that a little bit in detail in a bit. So these are the different three purchasing model that it supports. First is a vCode based, second is a DTU, and third is the serverless model. However, in majority of the cases, we go with serverless, specifically if you don't have to, evaluate and you already have a solution defined and you want to, implement it directly. Then in that case, you go with the serverless model. In the case of service tier, if you talk about, it basically have three service tier. First is general purpose, second is premium, third is the hyperscale. So now if we talk about Azure SQL Database, what exactly the Azure SQL Database is. So before that, let's talk about what is a SQL Database. So SQL Database is a product of Microsoft in the database area. So this is a general purpose database which supports relational data like your spatial, your XML, JSON. So Azure platform fully manage every Azure SQL database, and it even guarantees no data loss and a high percentage of data availability. Like I said, the products which are being produced by the Microsoft have a direct integration, have a direct even API available as well. So that's why in this case, Even Microsoft even provides you guarantees no data loss and even a high percentage of data availability. Now, if we talk about some of the key features are basically availability, easy to use, it has advanced security, even you're storing some data from compliance perspective, like from GDPR guidance perspective or HIPAA compliance, you can even achieve that compliance as well. Platforms, you can have SIMs of tools as well, with the help of which you can just perform the integration. Now, coming to the next part, which is Azure SQL Database Server. So in Azure SQL Database, a server basically is a logical construct which act as a central administrator for the collection of database. But at the server level, you can administer the logins, firewall rules, auditing rules, threat detection policies, and auto failover group. Now, coming to the other part, Azure SQL Single Database. So the three type of database that we talked about, now we're going to dive in more a little bit detail. So Azure Single, database or Azure SQL Single Database, one and the same thing. So single database resources create two type of database in Azure. So and according to that, you can divide the condition. So with the single database, each database is isolated and portable. So that's why it supports dynamic scalability. You can have monitoring and alerting. You can have security. You can have that integration with your platforms. It supports all this kind of thing. Coming to the other one, which is basically Azure SQL Database Elastic Pool. So Azure SQL Database Elastic Pool are simple and very cost-effective solution to manage and scale multiple database, which has varying and unpredictable usage demand. So if you have those kind of demands, you can just go for it, where you are going to have everything customized. Like you are going to have basic one where the resource connection, everything is going to be limited. In the case of standard, it's going to be a little bit advanced. In the case of premium, it's going to be at the higher stage. Again, in the course, basically we dive in more detail. Like I said, it can be very lengthy discussion. This is something just to give you a fair understanding. So even let me show you a little bit small graph which can help you to understand when you should consider a SQL database elastic pool. Because pools are well suited for a larger number of database with specific utilization pattern. The more database you can add to a pool, the greater your savings are going to become, because it's going to give you even the good discount as well. So like in this case, below cases, you can see here on the left hand side, wherein you have small number of database, so it's the best solution. But if your database are getting increased, in that case, using the elastic pool is going to be a best bet for you. The next type of database that we talked about was, Azure SQL MI, which is Azure SQL Managed Instance. So what that is? So basically, this is the intelligent, scalable cloud database service which combines the broadest SQL Server engine with the benefits of all the fully managed platform. So where you can have a direct integration with this. So in this case, so basically, on the left hand side, you have your Azure SQL database, let's say. So wherein if you want to use all the features of SQL Server, it's going to support. Even you want to migrate to Azure, and you want to have less maintenance overhead, it's going to support that as well. In the case of Azure SQL Managed Instance, it basically has 100% capability with the latest SQL Server Enterprise Edition, and even it has the backup and high availability, feature. So you can create your own virtual network and you can just define all the resources. Like in this case, I can have my own network, I can have my own SQL, I can even define my internal network, public network, everything. And in the case of on-premise server, as you know, like the on-premise basically means something which is running at your environment. When you're going to conduct something in your environment, it's going to be available, accessible to the all the different users. Now, if you talk about the key feature, so key feature basically it has, you can link with different devices. You have basically database mail, and you can have again integration with the keyword. That's something we talked about. Now, if we talk about the similarities and difference between the SQL DB and SQL MI, so one of the biggest similarity is the high availability. You can create a cluster environment. You can have the backups that it supports. Then, if we talk about differences, there are so many differences. Like you can have database mail in terms of auto failover, auto scale up, your recovery model. So there are various differences between your Azure SQL DB and the SQL MI. Now, if you're planning to take a course from us, from Edureka, in the same field, so in the Azure domain, if you want to dive in more detail, you really like that, you want to take a course. So that's going to be the one wherein we are going to start with the, what exactly is Azure solution. You being an architect, what you're going to do, the different components on it, and the hands-on. Then we're going to talk about Azure virtual machines. What are the different type of machines that you can create? What are the different components that you basically have? Each and everything in detail. What are different type of networks you have? How you can differentiate that, and the corresponding hands-on on it. Then you're going to learn about Azure VMS's availability zone and the hands-on on it. Then you're going to learn about Azure App Services, different type of services that you have, web app services, logic apps, and everything, and the hands-on. Then we're going to talk about Azure hybrid connectivity and site recovery at the hands-on on it. And we're going to talk about Azure storage solution and the design pattern and the hands-on on it. Then we are going to talk about Azure Kubernetes CVs, what are the Azure Kubernetes services, what is a Docker, the different components of it, how basically it works, how basically differentiate, and the hands-on of it. Then we are going to talk about, what exactly is Azure Active Directory and role-based access control and the hands-on of it. And then we're going to talk about Azure monitoring service, Azure monitoring and insight services, and the hands-on on it. And we are going to talk about, design Azure migration service. So if you have to migrate from your on-premise environment to the cloud, how you can basically, migrate and the hands-on on it. And at the end, you're going to have a cape like this. Just kidding. So now let's move on. So basically, now let's talk about SQL Server on the Azure virtual machine. So how basically you can have it. So as the name suggests, what you're going to do is you're going to spin up a dedicated virtual machine for you on Azure, and you're going to configure the SQL Server over there. So this is like your on-premise platform on the dedicated server. You're consuming the and creating the Azure and the SQL instance. Similar way, you're going to create a dedicated machine, dedicated state. Maybe a machine can be anything. Let's say Windows Server 2016, 2019, or Windows 10. On that, you're going to install the SQL Server, and you're going to manage whether it's patching, updates, everything. You are going to manage each and everything from there. So when you should basically use Azure VM, it depends basically, when you have a solution which requires certain compliance, you don't want to leverage certain things on the cloud, directly on the cloud, because in the actually database as a service, you don't have underlying VM. Now, if you have underlying VM, you can define the policies, you can make it a part of a domain, you can just implement certain policies, you can push the policies to a group policy, so all that kind of things. Depending on the requirement, you can leverage a dedicated virtual machine for your Azure, and even Azure supports it. Now, some of the key features, if I talk about some of the key features that it supports, is high availability, it has automated backup, it's a good performance, all things basically that it supports. That's it. I'm wishing you a great day ahead and happy learning.